Hi, hello, day 25. Um, hmm. Yeah, I just have to keep reminding myself that I am doing this as a personal experiment. Yes, it is public. People can find it who follow me in a professional context, but I am not doing it to try to educate. If people get something out of it, it's probably because they relate, not because they're like looking for expert advice. Because if you're looking for expert advice, there are a bajillion other YouTube videos, books, etc., that you could be listening to on this topic or watching. So I'm sort of saying that out loud for myself as a reminder, because I don't want this to be something that feels like a chore. Like there are times where obviously I love sharing what I'm learning and will continue to do that. But I think I'm in a little bit of a phase right now where um, I'm much less focused on this from like a empirical kind of perspective of like, all right, let's see how these experiments are working. Um, for better or worse. I mean, I think the cool thing about this being a 90-day experiment is I will have time to ebb and flow and just to sort of like fall into rhythms with things, to fall out of rhythms, to recommit, to see like, that thing wasn't making that big of a difference anyway, so I don't need to be so rigid about it, etc. So, there are definitely things I've put in place that have made a difference, and there are things that I have like totally fallen off with, and notice that I have that sort of self talk of like self judgment around it. But so I was doing this journaling last night, part of my heart centered thing with Danielle Laporte. She has you do like a write and burn on the dark of the moon, which is like 24 to 48 hours before the new moon. Um, I wish I had the little thing pulled up. I could tell you more about that, but you can look up Dark of the Moon if you're interested. And so that's sort of like a powerful time for releasing and letting things go. So she has you like write in lead on paper. So instead of my iPad, where I've been doing a lot of my writing, I wrote on paper in lead pencil, or lead pencil. I don't know what they're made of these days, but and I burned it in the fireplace. And long story short, I won't get into detail what I wrote, but it all sort of boiled down to self-love, which is very non, like, I think of all this ADHD stuff as like the criteria and what are the best practice treatment interventions and all that. And like right now, I'm just in a phase where I think I need to approach this from that more heart-centered place. Um, and for instance, I'll just share this example from earlier today. I was feeling scattered. I had my phone, but it was just sitting out over here on my desk. I was doing a few things on the computer. I had some time in between appointments, so I like had the option to like I could work on this, but I could work on this, and I could stop and read, and like it's that, and that's what makes me think like at times at least that I'm like, oh, this is a real thing for me, in terms of my neurobiology, um, my brain working a little differently than maybe the average person, is like those moments can feel so paralyzing, and can take on such a heaviness of like deciding wrong is fucking up and being a waste of time, and then that leads into a whole spiral. So which by the way, brief sidebar here, one little rabbit hole spiral that I fell down today. I was watching one of the things that I was like, one of my options, oh, I could work on this sophrology course thing. And which, yes, I've not limited myself to the one a week. I'm sort of justifying it because I'm like, well, if I were in college, I would get to learn like 3 or 4 classes at once. For me, the biggest thing there is, yes, I need to work on, I think what I could work on is like scheduling it in my calendar so that I can not have that decision paralysis of like, oh, past me already decided that from this time to this time during this free time, I will work on this course or something like that, or I will read this book during this time. And keeping that limited, the books limited, I think is still really good in terms of what I'm reading during any given week. So that I'm not like reading 2 pages out of this book and then 10 other books at once. So that is still useful. But courses, I was on the sophrology course. What was I mentioning about that? Damn it. Oh, so it had this TED Talk video of like just talking about neuroplasticity, haha, and the incredible capacities that we have to rewire our brains into. In sophrology, it's sort of like the impact of the mind on the body. So the mind of what we can do with the mind and the body working together, sort of like posturally and things like that, and breath, but using the mind to change the stress held in the body and using the body to impact the mind. So that feedback loop. But so the neuroplasticity video, I watched that, and this woman, like, she had very low functioning in her brain when she was young, like abstract reasoning, time, like all these things she just didn't have, and she grew up in like the 40s, 50s, I think. And so there just weren't adequate resources for someone like her. And long story short, she kind of accessed these resources and learned how to change her brain, and that has become her life's work too. And so I was like, oh my God, my spatial reasoning. Maybe I can actually fix my lack of spatial relations and spatial intelligence. And maybe I could learn how to draw beyond the level of a 4-year-old, because I really think that my lack of being able to draw even like more than a simple stick figure is because of my limited spatial relations. And it's why a lot of other things stress me out too. So I'm like, go down the rabbit hole on Amazon, like drawing for beginners books. And anyway, so that's just another little glimpse into my brain. Fell down that rabbit hole for a while. But at one point, I'm in doing all this stuff and the books and I just was like, what am I doing? What am I doing? I'm stuck in it again. And so I just paused and related to the writing I had done the night before, where I made a commitment to radical self-love. I said, what would be the most self-loving action to take in this moment? And I said, close the computer, put the phone away, stretch, take a brief little stretch, and bounce on the rebounder. And I thought I might bounce for like a minute or two. I barely ever turn the thing over, even though it's just right there. And I turned on some pop music and I bounced for like 8 minutes, and I did all those other things, and it just felt so good. And I thought to myself, like, yeah, I'm sure these are all like, I could name these as specific coping skills that I utilize, but like getting to them, the way that I got to them was by asking myself what would be the most self-loving thing I could do. And even earlier, when I was in session, I was noticing myself picking at my cuticles, which is one of my sort of self-stimming behaviors that I do, but it also hurts me to some extent. So I kind of paused internally and was like, it's not very self-loving. And I grabbed one of my crystals over here to kind of just like fidget with. So that's kind of, I feel like, should be a lifetime North Star question. But certainly right now at this phase in this process for me, I feel like I'll get to a lot of the answers just by asking that question and doing what comes up. So that's all I got. I'll see you guys tomorrow.